It had been an accident. The human body does not adapt well with pure quintessence, as Hagar had discovered with Lance's family. To have the pure substance added directly to their bloodstream, it caused them to burn from the inside out, their blood even turning to ash before their skin. Apparently, some foolish Galra had put the wrong substance in the wrong vial. They had thought this newly acquired quintessence was going to the testing lab, but instead it was taken to the experiment lab where it had been injected into Lance's arm. The paladin had been in her custody for about 8 quintants now. Humans, they found out, did not move chemicals through their bodies as quickly as Galra did, so the drug testing had been going rather slow. Now she stood over her test subject, who was writhing on the floor, screaming and jerking in pain as the quintessence coursed through his body. But he wasn't burning. She watched closely, and sure enough, he was going to survive. What did this mean? I want you to run every test, she snapped at the Galra who had been doing the tests in the first place. Find out everything. Yes, ma'am. The Galra, who had feared she'd kill him, gratefully got back to work. What the hell? Lance spoke to his cell ceiling. He hurt everywhere. It had been days since the quintessence incident, and it still felt like his blood was burning. On top of that, his whole body felt like that pins and needles when it falls asleep. The dealer, as Lance had taken to calling the Galra who did the experiments, who, by the way, he was establishing an odd relationship with, had said that it was because his nerves were recovering from the fact that every molecule in his body had been rewritten and practically ripped to shreds to accommodate the pure substance. Speaking of hell, he continued to the fellow prisoner, if I'm a horrible person while I'm alive, and while I'm alive I'm constantly burning from the inside out, do you think those will cancel out and I'll be able to go to heaven? Lance had taken to talking out loud. Not a lot, but when the pain was worse, he would to take his mind off of it. I mean, burning in hell is supposed to be a punishment, right? By the time I die, I'll be friggin' used to the heat. So it wouldn't be much of a punishment. I'm thinking it's like when your parents find out that sending you to your room is no longer a punishment, so they end up finding something else to punish you with. But there really isn't anything else, right? Unless I'll be haunting someplace. Do you think I'll be able to pick the place I haunt? Because I think it would be hysterical to haunt my friends and whisper the worst knock-knock jokes and puns in their ears while they're just about to fall asleep. I would never get bored. And then, when they died, I'd recruit them, and we'd haunt the future generation with the dumbest jokes. You know, I had no idea this would be my life goal until now, and I'm not even disappointed. After what had to be a few days, because he watched the other prisoners sleep off and on, he noticed that not only had he not slept, but he wasn't even tired. So he closed his eyes and tried to sleep. It felt nice to close his eyes, but he wasn't falling asleep. Pidge is going to kill me, he muttered and sighed. We are going to give you more, the dealer said, bringing in a larger vial of quintessence. Then I'm going to monitor exactly where it goes and what it will do to your body. Oh, goody, Lance said. I love me some liquid soul fire. Your personality hasn't been altered. He made a note on the screen. Death couldn't alter this well-tempered personality of mine. Yes, but death isn't your problem right now, he said, turning back to the table. Promises, promises, Lance rolled his eyes. He was more securely strapped down this time. Before, the pain had caused him to be able to break free and collapse on the ground. This time, there were rows of straps which reminded him of his sister's favorite movie. Hey, can I rename your room here? The dealer scowled. What do you mean? I think we should put a sign above your door outside that says, The Pits of Despair. And then, in smaller letters, have it say, Don't even think about trying to escape. I can see you are enjoying yourself, but I am confused as to why. The dealer cleaned a part of Lance's arm before he injected the quintessence. Oh, you know, Lance said, trying to focus on anything other than how much warmer it was starting to become. Just thinking I might need a miracle after this. Lance was never good with pain. He avoided it as much as possible. He was also not very good at explaining how pain feels without using common references. So when he had finished screaming, and the pain had deadened to a manageable amount, and the dealer asked how he felt, the first thing to pop out of his mouth was, "It feels like 50 years were taken off of my life by a water wheel." "What is a water wheel?" the dealer asked, typing everything he said. Lance didn't answer. His throat hurt too much from screaming, and he was busy thinking about other stuff. He was also concerned with the fact that he'd stayed awake through the whole process. When he was a child, he'd passed out from a broken arm. This had hurt much worse than a broken bone, and he'd been wide awake. Matt tapped his foot as he debated calling the castle. Everyone knew about Lance and was giving the paladin some breathing room, but this was important. "Matt, he's awake," Sol said, sticking his head in from the other room. They were in a small and remote outpost just outside the Empire's territory. The post was there to alert the larger forces if any Gulliver ships were detected trying to escape this way. Instead, they'd gotten a much stranger alert. Matt walked into the small area where the one not on duty usually slept. This time, it was occupied by the person Matt had least expected to find floating randomly in the middle of space. "Where am I?" "Why don't you tell us, Shiro?" Matt asked, keeping a healthy dose of skepticism. Plus, this outpost was Shiro's idea to begin with. "What? Matt? You're okay?" He looked around. What's going on? Where are the others? What happened to Zarkon? Did we win?" Matt tapped his knee as he thought of how best to address this. He knew Shiro was back with the other paladins, so who was this? What was the point of 2 Shiros? One was fine, but 2 was a little excessive. But what if this one was the real one? Could Shiro even go through mitosis? "Matt, please, tell me what's going on." "Specifically, what is the last thing you remember?" Matt asked. Shiro took a moment to think. "I finally got the Black Bayard back, and we attacked Zarkon with everything we had. I really struggled with Zarkon in the astral plane for a bit, but in the end, I must have won. If I had died in the astral plane, I wouldn't be alive now." "All right," Matt nodded slowly. "Hypothetically speaking, if I were to tell you that you were already back with the other paladins and piloting the Black Lion, what would you say?" Shiro just stared at him, which was a logical reaction. Matt nodded again, but then Shiro's hand shot out and grabbed Matt by the collar. "Matt," he growled, "I am sitting right here. Hypothetically speaking, if I were to go back, would I find another me? You forget. I know you well enough to know your hypotheticals are not hypothetical. Are the others okay? Why is there another me?" Matt was about to say that they were fine, but stopped as he thought about Lance. Pidge had told him about his and Shiro's fight before he had died. Matt, himself, had only known Lance for a little bit, but even he could tell that was out of character for him. He fights with Shiro, then he died. Matt swore. Shiro's grip tightened. "Please, Matt, tell me they're okay." "Welcome. What are you 2 doing?" Keith had found a note under his covers that read, "Come to Lance's room. Tell no one." Upon following the note's instructions, he found Pidge and Hunk crowding around his desk. "Shush and hurry over here." Hunk waved his hand. "We finally found something." Pidge looked like she'd found new tech. Instead, there was a crumpled piece of paper. "We decided to go through everything again, but this time slower and more thoroughly," Hunk said, obviously proud of himself. Keith picked it up and read it. 1. Help Coran with vent thingy. 2. Ask Pidge about coded communications. 3. Contact Keith. He looked up to find their eyes wide and expectant. "What?" "What would Lance want to talk to you about?" "I don't know." He flung the paper back down. "He didn't contact me. Why are you guys looking through his stuff anyway?" "Yeah, that's my fault," Pidge said, ignoring the question. He kept trying to ask me something, but I kept telling him to go away. He wanted to know about coded messages, so he was trying to hide whatever he wanted to talk to you about. Any idea what it might be about? Absolutely not, Keith said, no hesitation. I mean, he came to me once when he thought I would take Red away from him because Shiro came back, but he really doesn't hide the fact that he hates my guts. Keith, Hunk sighed. Now that Lance was gone, he wouldn't be too upset if he told Keith the truth. Let me let you in on why Lance always got mad at you. You see, he had always wanted to be a pilot, and he worked really hard getting into the garrison. His family made a lot of sacrifices to even pay for it. And while there, he finds he has no talent for the one thing he's always wanted to do. Then he sees you with all that talent, and you say stuff like, I'm no good, and I can't do it right, and you never once owned your own gifts. And for someone who's had to work as hard as Lance to get where he is, well, it's kind of like a slap in the face. True, Pidge said, and when you left after that defeatist speech of, Shiro is a leader I could never be, he was so pissed he spent 3 days in the training room killing drones with your picture taped to their face. But I'm not... Keith, Hunk gave him a playful shove. Own it. Own the fact that you're a badass and can pilot circles around most everyone in the galaxy. Seriously. There is a fine line between humility and self-destruction, but there is a line. And if Lance went to you, then you should have owned the fact that you were the leader, Pidge admonished. Lance has an issue with authority figures, and if he saw you as one, then you leaving was insulting. Keith tried and failed to see what they were seeing. He was more than sure that Lance hated him. But he had supported him as a leader. But he taped my face to the drones?